G'day everyone, I think we're on live. Let me just check. Yep, I think we are. Thought I'd pop in for particularly the Europeans and the English, and also for the local Aussies for a different time zone for you guys. I promised that I would pop in occasionally at different times so you can all join the chat. It's only been scheduled for a few minutes, so I'm going to wait and see how many people we can get on board before we start the discussion. I'm just going to basically go over some things that have been released today. And then we can also have a quick Q&A if you like, and go through some things that you might want to answer or ask me. So I thought we'd have a bit of a chat together. It's been a really interesting time now that Photokina's on. Some interesting announcements today. I'll put a video on about the Panasonic. I'm going to go through the Fuji in a minute. I'm also going to go through some of the Sony announcements that were done yesterday, or the Sony discussion. And we can talk about basically anything you'd like after that. So let's see who pops in now. I'm expecting it's going to take a while before anyone pops in, because like I said, it wasn't scheduled. So say hi if you are popping in the chat, and we'll give it a few minutes or so just to get everyone starting. So let me just put up pre-show. If you are coming in and you don't want to watch all this pre-show stuff, skip until I actually say when the show starts, and I'll put a timeline down there so you can have a look at when the show actually starts. Almost midnight in California, Chris. Good to see that you're still up. Wilson's here. Theodora is here. Well, there's a few people from the US. I didn't expect you guys to be online. It's quite funny. Chris, what's up? Just popping in for a chat, Chris. Thought I'd have a discussion with you all about stuff today. That was announced basically overnight anyway at Photokina, so I thought we'd have a quick chat about that and anything else basically that you guys would like to have a chat about. Hidu's here also from India. What's Up is also here. Please announce my Sony flip screen. I'm with you. What's Up? Honestly, I just wish it would happen. I'm going to talk about that too, about Sony, but now that Panasonic haven't done it, I'm just not confident at all that we're going to get it in Sony cameras, but oh well. Langston's here as well. Oh, sure, he goes live as soon as Longmire starts getting good. Do you watch Longmire? I started to watch Longmire for a while. There's a stack of seasons on that on Netflix here. Chris is here as well, setting up Photokina right now. Sony in my hands. Woohoo! Langston, hello from Los Angeles. Chris, just kidding. Oh, I love it. So I'm still, like I said, I'm going to wait. If you can, guys, too, please give me a thumbs up. It just lets other people know that I'm on live. I did post in the photography videography school that I was going to be popping in live. What's Langston said, just curious about people's thoughts on the Panasonic camera. That's why I thought I'd pop in tonight and have a discussion with you about that rather than on Friday. I thought we could have a discussion about that now. Wilson, 2:46 a.m. in New York. Boy, Wilson, don't you go to sleep, you guys. What's the time here? It's it's nearly 10 to 5 in the afternoon here. It's a beautiful day. I've got a great shoot coming up tomorrow. I've got a dance that I'm going to photograph in Melbourne, and I'm also going to film that, so that's going to be really exciting. I can't wait to do that. I love photographing dances and also filming them, so I'm going to be doing that. And then in the afternoon, I'm going to be photographing Kiara around Melbourne as well. So stay tuned for those shoots. Can't wait to share them, and I'm really looking forward to it. Tomorrow, spring has finally hit. It's 24 tomorrow, degrees Celsius, so that's beautiful to be shooting in tomorrow, or 25 I think it's going to be. So that's perfect for shooting around Melbourne tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to it. What else are people saying in here? I'm curious. Oh, they've already said that. 2 a.m. in New York. Langston said sleepless in the city. Just hit the thumbs up, Chris said. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it makes people know that I'm here, that's all, because a lot of people don't get the notifications. That's half of the problem with this stuff, and they don't get that, which can be a real issue. Just saw a vid on Fuji GFX 50R. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, the Fuji announcements, because I thought, it might be interesting. Michael says he loves Kiara. So do I. She's a great girl. I can't wait to shoot with her tomorrow. It's been a couple of weeks since we've done a shoot, so I'm really looking forward to it. All right, so anyway, I think we'll start because there's 40 odd now watching. It's obviously probably it might increase as we go along a little bit, but we can't wait too much longer. Langston said, I'm excited because Sony has gotten a kick in the butt to keep pushing. I don't know, Langston, whether they have or not. I'm a bit worried now that they may not announce anything, because I'm not sure they've been pushed enough with any of these announcements to really be a little bit scared of competition. The Panasonic may be good, but we're still waiting on things like that to see how that goes. So I'm not quite certain yet how good that's actually going to be, because they've only released a very sort of small amount. So I hope it is a really good announcement, and I really do hope that, because we definitely need someone to be pushing Sony. A couple of things we have to wait on, though, obviously, about that is focus and stuff, and I'll talk about that when we look at the camera in a minute, because it might be interesting to you as well. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to switch over to the OC Images sign, and then we'll start, because I'm not sure how many people will come in at this time of night. G'day everyone, just thought I'd pop in for a quick live chat, have a discussion about all the announcements at Photokina yesterday. Thought it might be a great time to actually come in and have a chat. There's a few people now we've got in. It wasn't scheduled, so I'm not sure how many we're actually going to get in. Most people are just saying hi early on, which is fantastic. I just explained tomorrow I'm going to be doing a shoot with a dancer walking through Melbourne. In the afternoon I'm going to be photographing and filming Kiara as well. So I can't wait to share some really exciting things with you in the coming days ahead. Wilson's just saying Panasonic will destroy Sony next year. Well, I don't think they're going to destroy them, Wilson, that's for sure. But at least their announcement so far has been reasonably good. There's things I want to discuss with you about that shortly. Michael said, I bought a Sony A7 III yesterday. Thanks a lot for your videos. So my Canon 6D and lenses. You're never going to look back with that, Michael. That's such a fantastic combination. It really is an amazing combination. And I really think that the Canon announcement, I wouldn't blame you for shifting over after the announcement that they made. It just wasn't good enough. The same with the Nikon. It just wasn't good enough to hold people. When you think that Sony have had these cameras out for 3 years, and that was the best that they could do in their first release, you would have thought they could have given definitely a better release. So I think if they're trying to hold people from switching, it may not work. It might stop people, though. I mean, I'm not sure whether if people have the lenses, they're going to stay in that area, but I still don't believe Sony has been pushed, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Chris said, Michael said he loves Kiara, I do too. I can't wait to be photographing her again tomorrow. Chris said you should get your banana and background for the Fuji discussion. I should have brought that out, shouldn't I, and done a live with the angry photographer, the happy photographer. I should have done that. That would have been hilarious. I should have done it. I might do a live one day. What's up said, I'm not expecting Sony to announce a flip screen anytime soon. So what would you guys recommend for a camera with a flip screen for vlogging that takes gorgeous videos? I don't mind waiting though. Well, there's nothing really out there apart from the GH5 and I suppose the Canon. If you're dealing with just vlogging, I suppose you could use the Canon and put a 10 to 18, the APS-C size lens on there. You could do that. So I suppose that would be one option. It's probably the only two options that are out there at the moment, unless you want to go for something like this as a stopgap, you know, where you can put it towards you and vlog with that. But at the moment, you're sort of limited if you want flip-out screens to be with the Panasonic or probably the Canon. There's also the Fuji, isn't there? That I'm not sure how good the video is on that one, though. G'day, Photomic. You should be in bed as well. So I'd say it's hard to know. I just don't think Sony have been pushed enough. I'm not confident now about when they're going to announce something, and I'll talk about that in a minute with you guys. Wayne saying hi. Photomic saying hi. Hype said, Panasonic camera has no phase detect, autofocus or flip screen. What a joke. I know it is a bit of a disappointment that they haven't put phase detect on that camera. Whether they're going to do some voodoo with the contrast detection on that camera, I'm not sure, because they're talking about using the AI on that camera. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can give with us with that one. I'm going to talk all about these cameras shortly. G'day, Mike. Photomix said, no one is destroying Sony anytime soon. I know, and I think you're right, Photomig. That's a disappointing thing about it. Sony has solidified their spot with the releases in the last year. Wayne said, Sony don't need much to stay ahead. This worries me as I don't want them to become Canon. It is a worry, I must admit. Michael said, agreed, I don't really care for the EOS R, and the only prime RF lens announced, the 51.2, is very overpriced. Yeah, it's very expensive, those lenses. Langston said, get a monitor. Not sure what that meant. Kieran said, do you think Sony or third-party lens manufacturers will come out with a decent telephoto in the near future? Obviously, we can't all afford $12,000, 100 to 400. Well, it's not 12,000 for the 100 to 400, Kieran. I'm not sure where you're getting those figures from. You can get decent telephotos, though. The Tamron's a fantastic lens that's cheap. And I think you're going to find in the near future, obviously Sigma are going to announce a 70 to 200 eventually. That's going to happen. And I also wouldn't be surprised if Tamron bring out other lenses as well, like the in the similar thing of the 70 to 200 as well. Remember, you don't have to buy these really expensive lenses, though. You can buy the 70 to 200 f4. That's what I use, and I love that lens. So don't be so saying you don't have to buy G Master lenses to get really good work. That's not really true. Jason said, hello, David. Langston said, complacency, yeah, probably. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, though. MBW said, get an M50. That's probably your best option. Yeah, that probably is, unfortunately. It's okay if you're only going to shoot in 1080p. Obviously, you can't do 4K in that, though, because it loses all of its phase detection. Viken said, which Sony camera you think has the best dynamic range for video? The A7 III at this stage, definitely. So if you're after an amazing video camera, get the Sony A7 III. Bob said, good morning, David. G'day, Bob. Wayne said, because Canon sit there in the name. Okay, they use their name to sell cameras, yep. Please, guys, if you can too, if you can give me a thumbs up, because this isn't scheduled. And people won't know I'm on. People aren't getting the bell. So if you can give me a thumbs up, it will let people know that I'm online. Photomix said, you can only become complacent if there is no competition, which means if Sony does become complacent, that's bad news for other manufacturers, not Sony, because no one will be competing. And an interesting thought. So let me start beginning. I'm going to give it like an overview before we start to go through looking at what Fuji's done, what Sony have announced, Sigma have announced, and also the Panasonic. So I was really hoping that we were challenged, Sony I'm talking about. As you know, I'm a Sony shooter, and I was really hoping that we were going to be challenged with the cameras that would probably force Sony's hand to release something. Unfortunately, I don't think we've been challenged by anything at this stage what would make Sony nervous about cameras that have come out. Now, I'm not saying they're all bad options. They're not. You can still get great images. Apparently, the images that you're getting from the Nikon, particularly, that sensor, from what I've read, is giving you better images than what you're getting out of the D850. So clearly, that camera is going to be amazing if you're talking about using it from a still point of view. The issue is that there's only one card on that, and I've talked about that before, and I'm not going to go through that all again with you, and like I said, I think they've crippled that in that regard for using it for professional jobs, which I've mentioned to you before. But obviously the sensor in that camera is very good, so it is a good camera for stills. I think the Canon particularly, it's an old sensor, so you're not going to get the dynamic range out of that sensor. I don't believe you will anyway. We'll know once it's released and we start to get full reviews from that camera instead of just people shilling at the moment, which obviously is going on out there. But I'm not confident that the Canon will have amazing images due to the fact that it's the same sensor basically from 3 years ago. But it has other features that are fantastic, like the fold-out screen. The autofocus is going to be outstanding on that. You know, things like that are going to be great on that camera. But again, it's been crippled because it's only got one card slot, which I think is the main problem with that camera. So they're issues that I find is a real problem. The Panasonic, for instance, looks like it's going to be a fairly good release for stills particularly, because I know, like I've discussed in the video I posted this morning, that that camera, if it's like the G9, was amazing in photography, and the autofocus will be outstanding if you're dealing with photography. The things that we don't know yet are how the contrast detection is going to work in video, because if it's anything like the GH5, it's not going to work that well if you compare it to, say, what Sony particularly and Canon can particularly do, and now also Nikon have improved their autofocusing in their latest Z cameras. So we're still waiting to find out how well that works. Now they're saying they're going to give some voodoo-y AI that will help, but I'm not convinced that's going to be the case. And Panasonic have promised all along that they would improve their focusing, and they really haven't done much in that regard. But overall, the camera seems to be good, but then again, they've left out the flip screen, which again is a little bit weird when they're doing that when it's in the GH5. So I'm hoping they're not going to be holding back like Canon and Nikon have to stop you buying the GH5, and are they protecting their GH5, their Micro Four Thirds cameras? So this is a really interesting thing, and I'm not certain what's going on there. So, and still, we don't know yet what bit rates they're giving us. They've said it's going to be 4K 60p, so we know that. But is it only going to be 4K 60p 30, 30p, so that we can actually shoot at that? If you go to 60p, is it going to crop in? These are all things yet that we don't know, and they've really just given us a little bit of a feeder to try and keep Panasonic people happy, I suppose, until the new year. But it looks promising. We have to give them the benefit of the doubt until it's released, until we see what they do. So at least they've given us something to look at. So I think at the moment, I'm a bit worried now that they won't release a full frame camera particularly. Fuji have pushed Sony. Fuji really are the only one at this stage that's pushed Sony at all with their X-T3. And I think that camera particularly has probably beaten the Sony a6500 at the moment with what it has to offer in that camera at the moment. It's not much better, but I think it is probably going to be a little bit better, and it has 4K 60p, things like that. But the battery life particularly is going to be bad, but it's not good in the a6500 either. So they're probably going to be on a par, and I think the Fuji may be just a little bit ahead now. So Sony probably have to answer that one. So I'm pretty confident that around probably sometime in October, we probably will see an A7000 or something like that released, because I think Sony have been pushed in that regard in the APS-C market. But they haven't pushed anything. No one has pushed anything on Sony with the full frame format at the moment. Nothing is even really coming close. So that's a problem for us if we're waiting for the A7S. And I think we may have to wait a bit longer now before that camera is announced, because I don't think Sony are going to be in any hurry. They may even wait to see what Panasonic do and what they announce early next year before that's something. I hope that doesn't happen, but I've got a feeling now that Sony are in no rush. I think they're probably sitting in their rooms, their boardroom, blowing party hats and balloons at the moment, because they probably can't believe how well they've done as against these other cameras announcing what they've done. And really, if you look at what the A7 III has, no one really has beaten that at this stage. And this is really interesting, and I think Sony did the incredible thing when they announced that months and months ago. They probably blew everyone else out of the water. So it was very, very clever marketing to bring that camera out when they did, for that price range that it was brought out at, and for the price that it actually, and for the features that you actually got in that camera. It still is incredible, and that's why you still have trouble getting that in the stores now. And that's why I don't think Sony are going to be in any hurry to do anything in video. If you're using an A7 III, it's really as good as an A7S2 in most scenarios, unless you're dealing with incredible light where you're having to shoot in 56,000 ISO, something like that and above. And very rarely who shoots like that. Not many people do, because most of us add lighting, and we're usually around that 3200 to 6400. So at the moment, the A7 III is good enough, and it's easily good enough. The thing that it's missing though is the 4K 60p. So once these other cameras release their cameras, it may push Sony to do something to combat that 60p. But my thinking is that they'll release the A7000 with 60p in it, and that combats that 60p of Sony not having a camera out there that can shoot 60p. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to be waiting for an A7S III at this stage, because I really don't think there's a reason for Sony to announce that camera now. What are they fighting? What are they going to get by announcing that camera? And this is the thing. I'd love you to chime in on the live chat about this as well, but I really don't believe that Sony have anything really there's no benefit for them to announce that camera because they've got no competition at the moment with the A7 III. This is the problem that you're dealing with at the moment. Like I said, the only thing missing really is the 4K 60p, and if they announce that with an A7000, it's basically game over because they also then have a camera that will compete with the Fuji. They have nothing that will compete with them in the high end as what the Sony A7 III will. So it's a really interesting scenario at the moment about what's going to happen in the future. I was confident that they would announce an A7S soon. I thought the Panasonic would have done that to them, the competition, but I don't believe that the Panasonic is enough to make Sony panic to have to announce something that quickly. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that. And I want to then go through some of these camera releases quickly. So before we go through the camera releases, let me just see if anyone's coming up with some questions about what I've said. I think most people are just saying hello early on. WhatsApp says, I'm not expecting Sony to announce a flip screen anytime soon. Well, neither am I now. I'm just hoping that the A7000 has it. Please, Sony, give us that in the A7000. Wayne, hi, mate. Vigan saying hi. Hype says, Panasonic camera has no phase detect autofocus or flip screen. What a joke. It is a bit of a worry. But we have to give them the benefit of the doubt to see if they can work some voodoo out later on. They may. We don't know yet, so that's the thing that we have to wait and see. Mike said, hi. Phantomx said, no one's destroying Sony anytime soon. I agree, actually, with that. What else? Jason said, hi. Hi, Jason. Beacon said, which Sony camera do you think's best for dynamic range? I've mentioned that before. I think you should use the A7 III. Easily got the best dynamic range out there. The Nikon Z camera, the 6, will probably have better dynamic range than that now, though, because the D850 was outstanding in dynamic range. So that could be a camera that will beat the A7 III, or the but we still have to wait and see how that is in real life when it's checked. But apparently that has amazing dynamic range, but you only have the one card slot. Bob saying good morning. What else have we got? Do you think the GH6 will have phase detection or dual pixel? After seeing the full frame announcement, I get worried. I'm not sure now. I don't think it will. I think Panasonic are going to concentrate on their contrast detection. Unfortunately, it looks like that's what's going to happen. I don't know why. I'm not certain why they won't be putting phase detection on their full frame cameras. I really thought it would have been a mix. If you could have got, and this is the interesting thing with Panasonic, if you could have got the mix, because I'm telling you that their focus, their contrast detection for stills is amazing, and it really is outstanding. If you've used a G9 or even a GH5 on stills, it's incredible. It focuses down to incredible low light, it's super quick, and it works amazingly well. It's only video where it doesn't work that well. So if they could have mixed that contrast detection with phase detection, they would have had a killer of a camera. And I am disappointed that Panasonic never put that in there. Peregrine said, please, Santa, can I have 2 camera systems for Christmas, or maybe 3 or 4? Vibahav saying hi. Wayne saying Canon impressed me with their new adapters. Yes, that's true. Photomix said, speaking of shilling, did you see AP shilling hardcore for Fuji and their vintage GFX 50? I know, look, he does. He certainly does shill for Fuji. He says he doesn't, but he does. Like, he bags Sony, he bags a Canon, he bags everyone else, and yet he just says everything else is amazing on Fuji. It's a bit of a laugh, really. Hype said, pick one of the new mirrorless for pictures. Which do you buy, Panasonic, Nikon, or Canon? If I was just doing pictures alone, I'll be buying the Nikon. We don't know yet about the Panasonic. You're going to have to wait too long. If you're talking about buying now for stills, I would buy the Nikon. Gary said, I shoot Nikon but don't see the point of changing to the Z system and the lenses which come with it. I hope Panasonic will push Sony. I do too. MBW said, in reality, the EOS had the opportunity to be a real contender. Really sad. I think Canon dropped the ball. I do too, actually. It's a shame. They really could have blown the industry wide apart if they did something amazing on that. Burger said 60p without crop is impossible at the moment. Morning from the UK. Peter said night owls, early birds. Sigma announced new lens, including zoom line. I'm going to talk about some Sigma releases in a minute, I think. Does Fuji have a flip out? Yeah, they have in their lower end camera, I think. One of their cameras I know has a flip out screen. Photomix said, good for Sony. They've released 3 cameras within 18 months. They don't need to release anything, at least for the rest of the year. And that's what I'm worried about, Ike. Peter said, I bet Sony is waiting to add deep learning AI for the A7S to improve its autofocus. Wayne said, Sony will put away the crowd by bringing out a new Sony. I hope so. Luke says, why the 24-105 f4 so expensive? Well, it's a G Master lens. It's a great lens. B&W said, might be a good thing, honestly. Maybe they can add things that people really are pining for that camera, maybe. They may be adding things with firmware, we don't know. Jason said, I heard that the new A7000 has brick wall autofocus. Oh, never let me live that down. I love it. Peter says, Wayne, Evan said, should I move to Australia? Yes, definitely. Move down here. It's a great country. Alan said, should I sell my 2470 GM for a Tamron? Well, and by what though, Alan? I probably would if I was you, yes, because I'm so happy with the Tamron. And then you could buy another amazing lens with what you sell. You'd almost probably have enough to buy the 24-75 and the 24. So it's certainly something to consider. It really is something to consider. The 28-75 is outstanding. It really is. Plus, it's light. That's the beauty of that lens. It's so light, and the macro side to it is so good. I showed examples yesterday when I did the live, or the other day. The only problem is stupid YouTube compression when you're doing live. They weren't the same. I look later on, and they do look out of focus. They're not, trust me. If you look at the images I've just put up of Rebecca in one of the shoots that I just did, you'll see how sharp it is. It is incredibly sharp. Creative Experiment said, with the 24 megapixel full frame, contrast detection will work better because each pixel is larger and captures more light. Well, I'm hoping so, but I still don't believe it will work as good as phase detect and a mixture of phase detect and contrast. We'll wait to see. We could be proven wrong. Peter said, Tech, if you want to stick with Micro Four Thirds but want PDAF, why not get an Olympus? True. One of the things I dislike is Sony removing their app support. I know that's a pain in the backside. That's one of the reasons why I've kept the A7 II, which I'm using now to film me. Even said, David, I've been doing photography for about 6 months now, and I've had quite a few gigs. I'm about to shadow a wedding photographer. I was thinking of making a YouTube about my progress. Great idea, Evan. Great idea. DMAC saying, sup. Michael said, my new iPhone shoots 4K 60p. Why can't a good camera do it? Exactly. All right, so let me now come down here. I'm going to go through some of this stuff because I want to go through quickly with you some of the announcements that have been announced. I think if you're looking at it, Fuji really have taken the show off. I mean, if you look at the camera releases overall, Fuji really have been the manufacturer of Photokina. They really have. I mean, if you think about it, they've released the X-T3, they've released announced two medium format cameras, and so really they've had outstanding Photokina. They've by far released anything better than anyone else. If we look at it down here, you can see they had two cameras. There's this 50 megapixel one, which is like a rangefinder type medium format camera, and they've also released a 100 megapixel one, which is a beast of a camera, which I think is going to be around about $10,000. It's still cheap. I shouldn't say it's cheap, but it's very reasonably priced for that range of camera. And that also has 4K apparently on that one. This Fuji GFX 50R doesn't have any 4K video on it. I'm not sure it'll even offer video. It might be 1080p. I'm not sure. But remember, the thing is, with that type of camera, it's no good if you're a normal portrait photographer or wedding photographer or something like that, because they're very slow. Like I think the 50R will only do 3 frames per second. They're not designed as a camera that you would do weddings with and things like that. They're designed for a very methodical shooter, like in studio or doing landscapes or things like that, where you can work very, very slowly. They're not designed to be this sort of run and gun type portrait wedding events type camera. So they're not for everyone. So please don't even consider that unless you are just shooting studio and things like that, or doing landscapes and things like that. I'd love to have a go of the 100 megapixels just to see how beautiful that camera probably will be. But when you think about it, that they've released the XT3, they've released this 50 megapixel sort of rangefinder camera, and they've also released a 100 megapixel camera as well. So they really have hit it out of the ballpark, really, if you look at it. They seem to be making great cameras. I'm surprised they don't want to do a full frame, and that's they may be thinking that that marketplace is too crowded, therefore they don't want to go into that marketplace. So they're probably thinking it's better to go medium format and sort of make themselves different in that regard, rather than having to compete with Sony, Pentax, Canon, Nikon, you know, like in that sort of vein. So it's interesting, but they certainly have had a great Photokina. So that's the first one that I wanted to talk to you about. The next one is the Sony. I'm going to talk about this because they're actually saying here that there wasn't much announced, and this was the thing that I was talking to you about, that they really didn't give anything really. I think they just wanted to have an announcement to say that things were going to be coming and not be left out of Photokina completely. So basically they had just this discussion where they said that they were going to announce a number of new lenses, and that's really all they said. They were also saying that they were going to have this AI to try and up the focus. Now, the interesting thing is, though, they were also talking about using IAF for animals, and that's going to be a fantastic thing, because I even love shooting, photographing my dog Ziggy, and to have the autofocus in animals will be a fantastic thing. So they really are upping their game in that regard. So if they can give us this speed up in the autofocus with this AI, and then they're going to give us the new lenses where they're saying we're going to have 60 lenses in the future, it's looking very positive. You know, gone are the days when people used to be able to say to us that Sony just didn't have lenses. And I laugh now when Canon and are shilling, obviously, all the time. When they're shilling and they're saying Sony haven't got the lens choices, what lenses are they talking about? If you're a wedding, if you're a portrait photographer, if you're an event photographer, you've got way more lenses than you could ever use. Way more lenses than what you could ever use. The only area it's still missing out on is wildlife and sports. And that's obviously going to be addressed with some of these new lenses. So that it's changing. And I think that's why I laugh now every time they say there's no lenses anymore. And that's totally not true. The other thing too is that the Sony IAF is by far the best implementation of that anywhere. Now, if they're talking about increasing their autofocus and also using this AI and giving us animal autofocus as well, they're really going to be pushing this camera to another level. I'm hoping that we can get this in firmware. I doubt it though, because Sony don't tend to work that way. Fuji do, but Sony don't. You're probably going to have to buy a new camera to get this technology, but still, you know, at least they're working on things. So, you know, it's interesting, and they're basically saying that they're going to have 60 lenses announced. Now, remember, that's 60 E-mount lenses if you're talking about APS-C and also the full frame. But that's not counting people like Tamron, like Sigma, and all the other countries and adapters that you can use. So the issue of saying before that we just didn't have enough lenses is complete crap, and I just laugh at people now. But that's a great feature. There was another interesting article too that I saw, and this is really interesting because part of that announcement was saying that I know a lot of the Nikon fanboys were saying about how this large mount is going to be this amazing thing where they can use this wide lenses. And I thought all along that can't be true, because you can use 0.95 lenses already on Sony now. So that to me was never true. It's just that I don't think anyone wanted to actually adapt to it to build an auto-focusing mechanism to suit that, but clearly they can do it. In this announcement, they've basically said, does a large aperture, high-quality lens require a large mount diameter? And they're saying there that the answer is no. So it can be done. Now, you have to watch it and see it, but that's a really interesting statement that Sony have come out, and I've said that before, that there is already 0.95 lenses out there that you can use. So I think that mount argument is just rubbish. But anyway, that's an interesting article. Next thing is Sigma have announced some new lenses. And I'm going to come back to questions, guys, in a minute. Sigma have also announced some lenses. They've announced the 28mm 1.4 lens. We've got the Sigma 40 1.4 and also the Sigma 56 1.4. So again, more lenses have now been announced. It's only a matter of time before they announce something like the 70-200 or 24-70, or Tamron starts to announce lenses as well in that regard. So, you know, it's such a positive time when all these lenses are continuously coming out. It's so exciting. Oh, that was just the IAA one I was putting on before. Panasonic, this announcement, go back. I'm not going to spend much time on this because I did put a video up this morning about that. But it looks like it's a really quite a good camera. Particularly the ergonomics look really nice on it. It's very much like the G9. But the great thing is there too that there's two versions of this. There's the 47 megapixel one and the 24 megapixel one. They're saying that the 24 megapixel one is going to be the hybrid photo one for video creators. So this is going to be the one that they recommend for video. They don't say whether each of them will have 4K 60p. I think they will, but clearly there's going to be a massive crop if you're dealing with a sensor that's 47 megapixel. This is a Panasonic. I don't believe what Tony Northrup said was correct. I don't think this is going to be a Sony sensor. I think this is going to be a Panasonic sensor or Tower Jazz, but it's going to be a Panasonic one, I think. But it looks like it's going to have dual IS. Now, if they can match the dual IS in the GH4, that IS is outstanding. You don't need to use a tripod, is that good. Now, I'm not certain whether they'll be able to do that with full frame because obviously the sensor is so much larger, but it's, you know, it may be possible. But it's interesting to see that they are putting dual IS in this. It's going to have this high-speed shutter, which is robust. They're saying we don't know yet about what the shutter count is or anything like that. Also, high-resolution EVF. We don't know what that is yet, whether that's going to be able to compete with what Sony are going to announce around November, or they already have announced. 3-axis LCD, so we don't know yet whether that's somehow going to be able to be pulled out and then flipped up facing back at the same as this. So I'm not sure whether it's that. Now I'm hoping, I don't know whether it's possible though, I'm hoping that you're going to get this, but because of the EVF at the back, I don't know whether it's possible. They may have some mechanism though that you can pull out and push up. I'm hoping that's the case, but I'm not confident that that's actually going to happen. So the other thing is too, it does have double or dual X slots. It's got XQD and SD. I said that the other way around this morning. And it's 100% weather sealing. If it's anything like the GH5, the weather sealing on this camera is a next level. It's unbelievable. And, you know, it probably is the same. And also the resistance against low temperatures as well is fantastic as well. So let me know what you think about that in the chat. I've left pre-show on the whole time, haven't I? I'd really like to know what you guys think about that. So I'm going to open it up to chat and see what you guys have to say. I'm just going back to see where I can find where we left off. Oh, there we were, roughly about there. Creative Element said, with 24 megapixel contrast detection will work better. I mentioned that earlier on, yep. Peter said, if you want to stick with my Micro Four Thirds, but want PADF, why not get the Olympus? I mentioned that before as well, and that's a good point. Olympus make great cameras. One of the things that I dislike is Sony removing their app support. I mentioned that before. That's why I've kept my A7R II, and that's the reason why I can film with this longer than the 30 minutes. D-Max said, sup. Michael said, my new iPhone shoots 4K 60p. Why can't cameras do it? I know exactly. Martin said, does the crop factor in 4K video affect light sensitivity, I think? If not, as not the whole sensor is used. Well, it must help, because I know if you're dealing with the A7R3, the A7 III, sorry, you get better low light, particularly if you're dealing with shooting Super 35. I think it's that way. I hope I'm not the wrong way around. The thing is, I tend to use the A9 because that can be in full frame and there's no penalty loss. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you have to shoot in Super 35 on the A7 III to get the best quality. So it may. As an example, 60p and mirrorless on full frame with fully articulated camera would overheat in 5 minutes. Not to mention the huge battery drain without a fan. Well, we're hoping that they can do it. Remember, it's all processor intensive too. If they can get a decent chip in there that doesn't run as hot, they should be able to do it. Ollie said, what is taking Tamron so long to make any announcements for Photokina? If they could bring out a 70-200 and a 60-3550 in the same style as a 2875, they would make a killing. I know they certainly would. I think the thing is, though, I don't think they can keep up with the demand for the Tamron 28-75. They still have trouble making enough of those. And you remember, they're also making great lenses for other manufacturers as well. Like the Nikon and Canon versions are fantastic of the Tamron lenses. Hyper says, what about all these Fuji goobers saying the X-T3 is the best camera of all time? I know, that's ridiculous. It is a great camera, at least, though. It probably is the best APS-C camera, though. Doesn't beat the A7 III, though. Like come on. Nikon 24-70mm lens has no lens breathing, which will be quite good for shooting videos. Yes, true. Everything is so damn expensive now. I know, look, nothing's cheap anymore, is it? That's the thing. I shoot weddings with the GFX. Well, I certainly wouldn't want to because I move quick, Mark. But I know it can be done. I mean, I used to shoot with medium format as well, but that was in studio. I didn't shoot with it outside or in weddings. I move around just too quick, and it's not the way that I shoot, so it'd be no good for me. But I'm not saying you can't do it. It's just not what I want to do. Peter said, Photomic, I think the 1DX crops 4K 60. I'm not sure about that, actually. I'll be interested to know. Michael said, I love a nice medium format for the studio. Mark said, Fuji would love to have people shoot weddings with the GFX. Yeah, I'm sure they would. It's just not for me. Like I said, Mark's saying he does it, and there's nothing wrong with that. If it works for you like any camera, Mark, that's fine. It's just not what I'd ever want to do. Sony should put out a medium format camera already. They already made the sensors. Do it, Sony, I know. Hi, Daniel. How are you? Peter Kent said, I'm using my GH5 now. Olympus not offer something that both good at video and autofocus. I don't mind which kind of focus they use. Okay, that's fine. But the smartphone I used to have shifting autofocus. Just by switch to a dual pixel sensor in the new model, it's now have great autofocus. Well, I'm going to try doing some tomorrow, I think, with Kiara. Photomix said, but it's full frame camera that does 60p, which is on par with any other camera that can do 60p. Yeah, that's true. He's talking about the Canon. Langston said, announcement of an announcement is what Sony did. I love it. Daniel said, Sony announced was important because they showed they have replied to the new attacks. Claims we are now leader full frame worldwide. We have one mount for all goals. Lenses are not a problem. And that's true, Daniel. Lenses are no longer a problem. So when people say that to you, I'm just going to laugh at them because it's not true. Peter said, I heard the GFX medium format cameras have a full frame crop mode, but they need cheaper and faster glass to make it worth it. I think they do have a full frame crop mode too. Yes, you're right. I'm not sure how many frames per second it can shoot though in full frame. Daniel said, and we need to release more lenses extra other than the total. And the next up is AI machine learning. Yes, that's what we discussed before, Daniel, that the AI machine learning for the IAF and to make the autofocus quicker. MBW said, I think 12 new lenses. Yep. They just haven't said what they are yet, though, so we have to wait and see what they are. where was it? Peter said Sony finally has a great set of FE lenses, but they still don't have an FE 2.8 APS zoom. I know they have been lacking in the APS-C lenses. Let's hope they do look after that as well. If there's an announcement of an A7000, perhaps they will give us some APS-C love and give us some lenses there as well. Ollie, Sony still good, still lack good native zoom lenses at a good price. Tamron with a 28 to 75 is the only exception. Yes, I agree. I'm hoping Tamron do some more. Hopefully Sigma too will announce some as well. They said the Sigma are big and heavy, not like the Tamron. No, Daniel said no phase detect on the Panasonic. I know that's a bit of a bummer. I agree. Why no flippy screen? I don't know. I don't know why they've left that off. I've got no idea. I was surprised. I thought it would have had it for sure. GFX 50R has no phase auto detect. That's right. It's only contrast, isn't it? That's another issue with that too. It is only contrast detection. Maybe a GH6. Well, you never know. Creative Experiment said GH6 won't come out until 8K supported, perhaps. Peter said photos have shown the Lumix S LCD are like the Fuji XT LCDs. Oh, okay, so it is a decent LCD then. Yeah, well, I haven't seen that yet. Same flip system as the XT3 on the S1 series. We're still waiting to find out about that, though. I'm not sure. Rui saying hello. Have they announced the prices of the lenses? Leica SL lenses are 4,000 up. Yeah, very, very expensive. But remember, the Sigma won't be, and the Panasonic probably won't be. So you don't have to buy the Leica lenses unless you want to. Chris said, do you think 4/3 will fade now? I don't think so. No, they will still support it. There's no reason why they would get rid of that. I don't agree with what's been said this morning about that when Tony said that he thought it would disappear. I disagree with that. I think they're going to support it for quite some time. Particularly with what they've announced, there's no reason why they would get rid of their Micro 4/3. GH5 firmware upgrade available in October, bet AF. Interesting. Tamron making bank off everybody. Yeah, they do. They're making great money, I bet, at the moment. Ollie's saying, happy face, that's good. If the new Olympus cameras do not have global shutter, then they will do bad financially. I know it's interesting how they're going to survive. Also, Panasonic, how are Panasonic going to survive? They're the only full-frame manufacturer now that hasn't gone to full frame, so to mirrorless. So that's an interesting one as well. So is there any difference, big difference in dynamic range between the A6500 and the A7 III? Yes, massive. There's a massive difference in dynamic range, Vilken. Yeah, the A7 III is much better. Rod said, don't think Sony has competition. Nikon, Canon, Fuji and Panasonic are all driving nails in Sony's coffin one by one. It's just a matter of time. I don't agree with you, Rod, at all. I don't think Sony will be the slightest bit worried with what they've announced at this stage at all. I think Sony are making... You just try and buy Sony, you can't get them. You can't get them anywhere here. If I go into shops all the time and they say they sell like hotcakes, the second something comes in, it's gone. If you walk into shops in Australia, I don't know about the US and other countries, but if I walk into shops now, I'm telling you, in Australia, Sony have massive parts of the walk-in shops where you go into. They used to be tiny little spots of these shops. Now they have major areas when you walk in. And they're everywhere. And look, they really are selling well. And this is the thing now that you've got to understand. Saying that Sony should be worried about the competition, I think is a silly statement, Rod. Chris said, I do have full frame, but love the GH5 and the lenses for hiking. Yeah, I mean, it is nice and light, but do what I've done. Get something like the Tamron 28 to 75 and put that on the A7 III, and it's light as. That's a fantastic system with something like that on there. Laugh out loud with all these new releases. I know how exciting is it for a geek like me. It's just unbelievable. JG Ryder said, a major YouTuber trashes Sigma lens quality. Well, I don't trust what anyone says on that. I've used Sigma lenses when I shot Nikon. They were amazing lenses. Anyone that trashes their quality lenses, honestly, they don't know what they're talking about. They're probably not even a photographer. The people that shoot, people that actually photograph like I do, where it's my job to actually photograph, and when I use lenses, I can tell you that there's nothing wrong with Fuji lenses, Sigma lenses at all. Their autofocus may not be, say, as good as what the native lenses are for Sony, and that's the problem with tracking and things like that, and they may be a little bit noisy when they're moving focus back and forwards. But you can't tell me that, that Sigma lenses aren't sharp. Anyone that says that is shilling, and they are shilling. Creative Experiment said maybe the AI AF in the S1 rewards a good AF performance when you don't delete the file in the camera. I'm not sure what that means, but look, they may do something really well with that, and that's why I'm saying I'm giving Panasonic the benefit of the doubt. They're still 6 months away probably from releasing it, so we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. Photomix said, I'm not even sure if overheating is the problem as opposed to it being too processor intensive. Remember, these sensors have high megapixel and they have to run the AF as well. And that's the thing, if they can give decent processors, remember, if you have really fast processors, they will run a lot cooler, and that can be the difference. Photomix says, which means camera would suffer performance if being overheated. MBW said, if you could only have one, would you have a GH5 Amazing IBIS or flip screen in the next Sony camera? Honestly, I think I'd take the IBIS. I think Sony AF is trustworthy. I know it's hard. I adored the GH5 IBIS. I did absolutely adore it. I got rid of the monopod and used to hand hold it, and the stabilization was incredible. For what I shoot, particularly for vlogging and things like that, I would prefer to have the flip out screen because I'd like to face it back. If you were doing videography yourself, I would prefer to get the GH5 with the IBIS rather than a flip out screen. If you were just doing it solely on hand holding, but I really would want a flip out screen, and I'm just dying to get one due to the things that I do for my YouTube and things like that. My A7 III overheats and files get corrupt. I've lost footage, can't figure out to recover it. Very disappointed. You may have a problem with the camera char box because it shouldn't be overheating like that. It really shouldn't be. I think I'd be putting it into Pro Support and get it checked because there's something wrong if your camera is overheating like that. Carl said, as a GH5 user, I think the A7S III will be my next camera. Panasonic just lost my interest with their photocentric S series cameras. And I agree to you, when I read these this stuff that I just read when it was announced, they do seem to me to be very still-centric cameras. And that's the thing about the way that I read those cameras. They're like a full-frame version of the G9, and this is the interesting thing about these cameras. So I agree with you there. I'd be a little bit worried, but give them the benefit of the doubt. They still have plenty of time yet to change, to see what comes out. So let's see what happens in the future. Carl said, that being said, the new Micro Four Thirds lens is very impressive. Good on them. Yep. John said, hi, David. Great to catch a live show. That's why I've popped on at this time for you guys, John. UK, still haven't got a Sony A, but the show is fun and friendly. Thanks so much, John. Creative Experiment said that GH5 dual IBIS with my 100 to 300 lens resting on the back of a chair for close-ups is amazing. I know you just cannot beat that IBIS. I agree with you. It's stunning. It really is stunning. If that had perfect autofocus, I never would have sold that camera. I love the GH5. I really did. It's just the focus I couldn't rely on for the way that I shoot, doing stills and video at the same time. It just wasn't working for me. So that's the reason why I got rid of that camera. If it had great autofocus, I'd still have it. And that's about it. So we've basically caught up. So that's about all I wanted to discuss today, guys. I might try and post a video or something from the city tomorrow or something like that. And also I'll have Fridays live on. I will come on live again as my normal show Friday. I wanted to do this one for you guys to go over Photokina, all the announcements, and also to come on for my European viewers that can't usually get onto the live show. So basically, that's all I really wanted to talk about today. So let me know in the comments down below if you think I've missed anything, or if you'd like to comment on anything like that. Really looking forward to the coming weeks to see what happens. I'm hoping Sony does prove me wrong and announce something very soon, but I'm not sure now. And apart from that, I'll see you all in the next video, guys. So catch you all again soon. Oh, just let me answer this one. I really like Panasonic. Do with the micro four third lenses, 10 to 25 1.7. Yes, that's a great lens. It'll be fantastic. I'll read a couple of these before I go. MBW said, I watched Jason Vong's Sigma versus native test Sigma lenses. Seem to be extremely sharp. They just don't track as well. And that's what I'm saying. They will not track as well as a native lens. But if you're after a sharp, still lens for photography, you won't get any better than what the Sigma give you. But I also need good autofocus. Thanks, Dave. Good evening. Yep, good evening. You forgot the 20K Leica. Yeah, I'm not even going to talk about that one. All right, guys, that's all for now. I'll see you all again soon for the next video. Bye for now.